You have to stop. There's something in the road!
Early morning sunlight drifted softly through the curtains, painting gentle gold across the living room floor. It was one of those quiet, peaceful mornings where the world felt slower. The kettle hummed in the kitchen, birds tapped lightly at the windowsill, and the small house seemed wrapped in a warm, familiar calm. At the center of this quiet stood Rowan, a retired service dog with graying fur around his muzzle and eyes that still carried a spark of purpose. He moved slowly now, but with intention, as if every step still meant something. While his owner, Mara, stirred sugar into her tea, Rowan padded across the room. He paused by the basket of his old toys, nudged one gently, then carried it in his mouth with deliberate care. It wasn't random, it felt chosen. Mara watched him with a soft smile. "You're feeling sentimental today, old boy?" she whispered. But Rowan didn't respond with the playfulness she expected. Instead, he walked to a specific door, the one at the end of the hallway that Mara rarely opened anymore, and placed the toy neatly in front of it. Then he sat, posture straight, eyes alert yet gentle, watching the door as if waiting for something only he understood. A quiet tug pressed against Mara's heart. Something about the moment felt different, tender, meaningful. Rowan's face held no fear, only a kind of emotional clarity, a soft insistence that carried more weight than words ever could. She knelt beside him, unsure whether to smile, or to ask the question rising inside her. Because Rowan's behavior wasn't random at all. It felt like a message. A memory. A calling back to something beautiful. And the truth behind his actions was more beautiful than anyone imagined. The morning light came in slow, soft, warm. It slid across the wooden floor like a quiet blessing, settling around the furniture, the plants, the photos on the shelf. Everything in the house felt still, peaceful, as if the day itself wanted to stretch before speaking. Mara moved through the kitchen with that half-awake calm. The kettle clicked. Steam drifted up in a soft ribbon. A spoon tapped the side of her mug, once, twice, then rested. And on the other side of the room, Rowan lifted his head. The old service dog didn't rise quickly anymore. His joints took their time. His breaths were slow, steady, full of years and memories Mara could only guess at. But even with age settling into him, his eyes still carried something bright, something aware. He watched her for a moment. Then, gently, he stood. Mara smiled when she heard the soft shuffle of his paws. "Morning, handsome," she murmured. Rowan blinked once. Not playful. Not eager. Something quieter. Something thoughtful. He walked toward his toy basket, the same basket he rarely touched these days. Mara paused mid-sip when she saw him lower his head and nudge through the toys. A soft thump, then another, as he moved a few old favorites aside. His nose stopped at one. A small, worn stuffed toy, a faded fabric animal whose seams had been stitched more than once. Rowan nudged it, then picked it up. Mara lowered her mug. "That one?" she whispered. "You haven't touched that in months." Rowan didn't look at her. He turned, holding the toy gently, and walked, slow, deliberate, toward the hallway. Mara followed at a distance, her footsteps quiet on the floor. He reached the door at the very end. A simple door, white paint, brass handle, rarely opened. Rowan placed the toy down with careful precision. Then he sat. Straight. Still. Focused. As if waiting. Mara stood behind him, unsure whether to laugh, or to worry, or to simply breathe in the moment. "Rowan, what is it?" she asked softly. But Rowan didn't turn his head. He didn't move at all. Only his ears twitched lightly, as though listening to something only he could sense. Mara lowered herself beside him. Slowly. Her hand hovered over his back before resting there with a gentle stroke. He let out a calm breath, almost a sigh. The hallway around them seemed different now, quieter, like the air carried a memory she couldn't quite reach. Dust in the golden light drifted slowly, catching the glow with every movement. Mara looked at the toy. It was familiar, but distant, a piece of Rowan's past before he came to live with her. "You're thinking of him again, aren't you?" she whispered, though she wasn't sure. Rowan blinked. Not sad, just aware. A soft, warm ache pushed into Mara's chest. She didn't open the door. She didn't touch the toy. She simply sat there beside him, letting the silence speak. Rowan lifted his paw and rested it near the toy gently, with intention. Mara leaned forward. "You want me to see something?" No answer. Just Rowan's steady breathing, and that focused stillness he hadn't shown in a long time. A moment passed. Then another. Mara felt a subtle tug in her heart, as if something unseen was trying to guide her, something from Rowan's memory, something tender. The kettle clicked behind them as it cooled, but neither of them moved. The light shifted softly, sliding further across the floor and touching Rowan's fur. It lit the gray around his muzzle. It made his eyes shine, almost reflective. "You're trying to tell me something," she whispered. Rowan finally turned his head, just slightly acknowledging her voice, then looked back at the door. That simple motion sent a warmth and a question through her chest. Because this wasn't a random act. It wasn't play. It wasn't confusion. It felt like purpose. Like emotion. Like memory. Rowan rested his head against her knee, gently, as if asking her to understand. Mara swallowed. Her voice softened. "What does it mean, boy?" Rowan remained still. The hallway stayed warm. Quiet. Wrapped in something almost sacred. What the dog sensed, what he remembered, what he carried inside him, was about to change everything. The next morning arrived with the same soft golden quiet, the kind that seemed to settle gently over everything it touched. Mara moved through the house with a slower rhythm than usual. Her thoughts drifted back to Rowan, to the toy, the door, the stillness he held like a quiet message. She hadn't opened the door yet. She wasn't sure why. Maybe she wasn't ready. Maybe Rowan wasn't asking her to open it, not yet. She brewed her tea again, the steam rising in calm spirals. Sunlight shimmered across the floor. The house breathed in warmth. And then, the sound. A soft shuffle. Paws against wood. A familiar movement. Mara turned her head slowly, almost afraid to disturb the moment. Rowan stood at the toy basket again. His nose brushed through the toys, not in a playful way, not in curiosity, but in that same focused, deliberate manner. His breathing slowed as he seemed to wait for something, a memory, perhaps, before selecting the same worn toy. The same one. Mara set her mug down. "You remembered," she whispered. Rowan lifted the toy gently, as if it were fragile. His steps were steady. Purposeful. A soft echo of who he used to be, the trained service dog who understood signals, patterns, meanings. Mara followed him again, her breath catching a little as he stopped in front of the same door. He placed the toy down. Then sat. Straight. Still. Focused. Exactly as yesterday. Mara sank down beside him, her heart tightening in a warm, aching way. "Rowan, why this door?" she asked. Rowan didn't look at her. He didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed on the door, soft, steady, patient. Mara leaned her back against the wall and exhaled slowly. The morning light pooled around them like a warm blanket. The gentle quiet pressed in, comforting, but filled with something unsaid. She brushed her fingers through Rowan's fur. "You're really telling me something, aren't you?" Rowan blinked once. Then, very slowly, he lowered his head until it rested lightly on the toy. The gesture was small, but full of meaning. A memory tugged at Mara's mind, a conversation from when she first adopted him. His previous handler's friend had told her. He remembers doors. He remembers rooms. He remembers purpose. Back then, she didn't fully understand. Now, she felt it. Rowan's breathing deepened. His tail didn't wag. But there was peace in his posture, a quiet confidence, like he knew exactly why he was sitting there. Mara swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. Is this connected to him? Rowan nudged the toy with his nose. A soft, tender push. Mara felt something warm rise behind her eyes. Oh, buddy, she reached out and held the toy for a moment. Rowan watched, then gently nudged it back toward the door. The message was becoming clearer, but not the full picture. Mara leaned her head back against the wall. She let her breathing slow, matching Rowan's steady rhythm. The house remained quiet. A warm stillness. Dust drifting lazily through the sunbeams. The air felt full, like something long asleep was waking gently, carefully. Okay, she whispered, her voice steady but soft. If you want me to remember with you, I will. Rowan shifted just enough to lean his shoulder lightly against her leg. A silent thank you. A small connection, but deep. Minutes passed. Neither moved. Eventually, Mara rose and opened the curtains wider. Light poured into the hallway, brushing Rowan's fur with gold, illuminating the toy at the door, warming everything it touched. Rowan lifted his head and watched the light as if recognizing something inside it. His ears twitched. His eyes softened. He used to play with you in the mornings, didn't he? She said softly. Rowan blinked again, long and slow. Acknowledging. Mara knelt down once more. You choosing the same toy, the same door, the same time of day, that's not random. Rowan let out a gentle exhale. His body relaxed, but his attention didn't break. He taught you these patterns, the meaning behind them, the intention. Rowan turned his head slightly toward her, eyes warm, almost grateful. A deep breath left Mara's chest. Okay, she whispered. I'll pay attention. Rowan returned his gaze to the door, calm, patient, certain. Mara's heart fluttered with a soft emotional tension. Not fear. Not sadness. Just tenderness. A longing to understand what Rowan was so gently guiding her toward. She brushed her thumb along the toy. You're not asking me to play, she murmured. You're remembering. Rowan closed his eyes for a brief, peaceful moment, then opened them again and stared at the door with quiet devotion. The hallway glowed in warm amber. The air felt deeper now, layered with emotion, memory, and gentle mystery. And Mara knew, with absolute clarity. This wasn't just a habit. This wasn't just an old dog revisiting old toys. This was Rowan's heart speaking. And she was finally beginning to hear him. The next few days brought a soft shift to the rhythm of the house. Small, subtle, easy to miss if one weren't paying attention. But Mara noticed everything now. Every morning, Rowan woke with a gentle alertness, not restless, not anxious, just present. He'd stretch, shake out his fur, and walk with that familiar slow determination toward the toy basket. Always the same toy. Always the same door. Always the same silent purpose. By the third morning, Mara didn't even bother picking up her mug before watching him. She stood barefoot on the warm wooden floor, arms folded, breathing in the quiet hum of sunrise. The house felt like it was waiting, too like it understood Rowan's message before she did. He selected the toy. Carried it carefully. Placed it in front of the hallway door. Then sat. Mara stepped forward slowly. 3 days in a row, she whispered. Her voice held a softness, part awe, part tenderness. Rowan remained still. His back straight, his gaze fixed on the door as if marking time. Mara knelt beside him. She didn't touch the door. She didn't touch the toy. She only watched closely, trying to perceive what he perceived. A gentle silence settled over them. Dust drifted quietly through the sunlight, glowing gold as it floated. Rowan's breathing slowed. His posture softened but didn't lose its intention. Mara tilted her head. What do you see, boy? Rowan didn't move. But something about his expression shifted, a small change, a faint warmth, like recognition. Mara exhaled. She placed one hand on the floor beside the toy. Her fingers brushed the wood, cool in the shadows, warm where the sunlight touched. "You've done this before," she murmured. "Not here, but somewhere. With someone." Rowan's ears twitched. He lowered his head slightly, almost acknowledging her thought. Mara's heart tightened with a soft ache. She had known Rowan was a retired service dog, but she had never truly understood what service meant for him. Not until now. Not until this moment, this pattern, this quiet devotion. She sat beside him, letting her back rest against the wall. Rowan shifted closer, leaning gently against her leg. "You're asking me to remember someone I never met," she whispered. Rowan's tail moved once, slow, a gentle brush against the floor. Not excitement. Something more tender. Mara felt the emotional weight settle in her chest, not heavy, just warm. Like a memory waiting to be shared. She spent that morning observing him more intentionally than ever before. Every tilt of his head. Every breath. Every small adjustment of his pause. Rowan wasn't random. He wasn't confused. He wasn't searching. He was guiding. And the realization filled the house with a soft, cinematic glow, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Later in the afternoon, Mara sat on the couch, sorting old mail. Rowan lay beside the hallway, eyes half closed but always facing the same door. Mara watched him from across the room. "You know," she said quietly, "I used to think you came to me to rest. To slow down. To retire." Rowan blinked once. "But maybe you came to me to teach me something too." Rowan lifted his head, meeting her eyes across the room. That look, calm, deep, aware, pressed gently into her heart. She set the papers aside. "Okay," she said softly. "I'm listening." Rowan lay his head back down, but his gaze stayed fixed on her, steady and warm. As evening settled, Mara noticed something else. Rowan didn't just choose the toy. He chose the time. Always morning. Always when the light first hit the hallway. Always when the house felt quiet, rooted in memory. It wasn't a random hour. It was a ritual. Mara stood in the hallway that night, the door behind her, Rowan resting beside her foot. She traced the edge of the doorframe with her hand. "What did this door mean to you?" she whispered. Rowan let out a slow sigh, peaceful, almost nostalgic. A soft emotional pull tugged at Mara. Something inside her felt closer to understanding, but not fully there yet. She looked down at him. "You're asking me to be patient, aren't you?" Rowan rested his chin on his paws, eyes fluttering closed for a moment. Mara sat beside him again, their shoulders almost touching. The hallway lamp cast a gentle amber glow across Rowan's fur. Shadows stretched softly, warm and forgiving. She spoke in a quiet rhythm, matching the rise and fall of his breath. "I'll watch. I'll pay attention. I'll let the meaning come when it's ready." Rowan opened his eyes at that, just slightly, and nudged her knee with his nose. A tiny gesture. A gentle affirmation. The connection between them deepened not through words, but through trust, ritual, memory. Mara didn't know the full story yet. She didn't know why Rowan had chosen the toy, the door, or the morning light itself. But she knew something now, something true. Rowan wasn't lost in the past. He was guiding her into it, one tender moment at a time. And Mara, quietly, lovingly, was beginning to follow. The fourth morning arrived wrapped in a warm hush, the kind that makes everything feel slower, softer, more meaningful. Mara woke early, almost without thinking, as if her body now understood Rowan's rhythm. She didn't rush. She didn't turn on any loud lights. She simply moved through the morning glow like someone following a quiet melody. Rowan was already awake. He lay on his bed near the toy basket, his eyes half open, his breathing steady. The moment Mara stepped into the room, his ears lifted, just slightly, acknowledging her presence. "Good morning, friend," she whispered. Rowan blinked once, then pushed himself up with the gentle determination she had come to adore. He walked to the basket. No hesitation. No confusion. Just that same soft intention. His nose brushed the edges, paused, then found the worn stuffed toy again. Mara felt her chest warm as he carried it in his mouth, careful, delicate, and began the slow walk toward the hallway. She followed him, not saying a word. When Rowan placed the toy before the door and sat down, Mara didn't stand behind him this time. She sat beside him. Right at his level. Rowan shifted slightly, leaning into her leg, a small touch, but meaningful. Mara rested her hand on his back. For a long, quiet moment, neither of them moved. The morning light draped itself across Rowan's fur, warming the silver around his muzzle. It cast a soft glow on the hallway floor, turning the scene into something almost cinematic, the kind of moment that lives between memory and presence. Mara's voice trembled with warmth. "You want me here with you, don't you?" Rowan didn't look at her. Instead, he gently nudged the toy with his nose, a subtle reminder of the message he'd been trying to share. Mara exhaled, slow, controlled, letting her shoulders release a tension she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. "You know. I never told you this," she murmured, "but when I first brought you home, I was scared I wouldn't understand you. You had a whole life before me. A whole world. A person you loved. Someone who trained you, trusted you, depended on you." Rowan lifted his head at the word someone. His eyes softened, steady and deeply aware. Mara smiled gently. "I guess I worried I'd only be the second chapter in a story that meant more to you than anything else." Rowan leaned his shoulder a little more against her leg, grounding her with the weight of his presence. His quiet reassurance spoke louder than words ever could. Mara felt emotion rise slowly, warmly. She cleared her throat. "But sitting here with you, watching you choose this toy, this door, this moment, I'm starting to see it. You're not choosing between past and present. You're sharing both." Rowan looked up at her, then really looked, his gaze filled with a soft clarity. A connection sparked between them, gentle and deep, like the meeting of two heartbeats finding the same quiet rhythm. Mara reached down and picked up the toy. Rowan didn't protest. He watched calmly, his head tilted, as if waiting to see what she would do. She held it in her hands, feeling the worn fabric, imagining the years it had lived through. "This mattered to him," she whispered. "And it matters to you." Rowan lowered his head, touching his nose to her wrist, a tiny, tender gesture that melted her heart. Mara let out a shaky breath. "And now, it matters to me too." The bond between them deepened in that moment, not through commands, not through duty, but through shared feeling. Through quiet understanding. Through love that lived gently, without demanding anything in return. Rowan rested his head on her lap, his eyes closing just slightly, not out of sleepiness, but out of trust. Mara stroked the back of his neck slowly. "You're telling me it's okay to look back," she murmured. "You're telling me that remembering doesn't mean losing." Rowan breathed in and out, his chest rising against her knee. The hallway around them felt wrapped in warmth. The golden morning light. The stillness. The soft hum of life. Everything converged into a moment so calm, so heartfelt, that Mara felt her throat tighten. She placed the toy gently back in front of the door. Rowan lifted his head and leaned into her side again. "I don't know what's behind this door yet," she said, her voice a soft promise. "But I'm not afraid of it anymore. Not if we open it together, when you're ready." Rowan's tail brushed once against the floor. Slow. Meaningful. Mara leaned back against the wall beside him, letting the warmth settle into her bones. For the first time since he began this ritual, she didn't feel like an observer. She felt like a partner. A companion. A part of Rowan's story, not because she replaced someone, but because she was invited in. The moment stretched gently, filling the hallway with a deep emotional quiet. Rowan nudged her hand again. A simple touch. A quiet answer. They were in this together now. And the door, the memories, the meaning Rowan carried, would soon reveal themselves. One soft, loving step at a time. The next morning felt different, not heavier, not tense, just full. Full of a quiet anticipation, like the air itself knew something was about to shift. Mara woke before the sun had fully risen. She didn't set an alarm. She didn't need to. Rowan's presence, his rhythm, his purpose had woven itself into her mornings. She stepped into the hallway, her feet meeting the cool floor. Soft orange light seeped through the curtains, slowly brightening the house. Rowan stood near the basket again. He didn't look at her. He didn't need to. He knew she was there. And she knew what he was about to do. He nudged through the toys, paused, selected the same orange stuffed animal. The same pattern. The same care in his movements. But today... Mara walked ahead of him. Rowan followed her down the hallway, their steps slow, shared, connected. She crouched beside him as he placed the toy before the door for the 5th day. A soft breath left her chest. "Okay," she whispered gently. "I think I'm ready." Rowan's head lifted slightly. His eyes held that same deep clarity, warm, patient, trusting her to make the next move. Mara placed her hand on the doorknob, but she didn't turn it right away. She closed her eyes first. Let the air settle. Let her heart slow. Rowan pressed his body lightly against her leg, grounding her. When she exhaled, it came out as a tremble of emotion, not fear, but something like respect. "Let's see what you've been trying to show me." She turned the knob. The door opened with a quiet click, then a slow groan, as though it hadn't moved in years. Warm light spilled across the inside of the room, a small, simple space filled with dust-covered boxes, an old folded blanket, a framed photograph leaning against the far wall. Rowan stepped forward, only one paw, then stopped. He didn't enter. He simply looked inside with soft recognition. Mara swallowed, her voice barely more than a whisper. "This was yours, wasn't it?" Rowan blinked slowly. The air shifted around them, not heavy, not sad, just tender. Mara stepped inside first. Rowan remained by the doorway, his breathing steady, his presence calm. The room smelled faintly of old wood and fabric. Sunlight filtered through a small window, turning floating dust into tiny drifting stars. Mara's fingers brushed over the blanket. It was thick, coarse, the kind used during field work. A faint dog hair clung to one edge, preserved by time. She knelt down. "This was his blanket," she murmured. "I remember seeing it in one of the pictures you came with." Rowan took a single step forward, the toy still in his mouth. He didn't cross into the room, not yet, but he placed the toy gently on the threshold, as if marking the place where two worlds met. Past and present. Memory and now. Love that never faded. Mara looked at the framed photograph. A man stood in a uniform, smiling, tired but proud. Beside him, younger Rowan sat tall, alert, loyal. Mara ran her thumb over the glass. "You loved him," she whispered. Rowan lowered his head, eyes softening as he gazed at the picture. Mara felt her throat tighten, not from sadness, but from the gentle weight of understanding. She sat on the floor and placed the photograph upright. The dust settled quietly around it. Rowan stepped forward again, a slow, deliberate movement, and sat just inside the door. Not fully entering, not claiming the space, just acknowledging it. Mara watched him with warm, trembling eyes. This room, this door, this toy, they're all connected. She inhaled softly. "You've been trying to bring me here, to remind me that you had a life full of meaning before me." Rowan shifted, leaning his shoulder against the doorframe. Mara reached out her hand. Rowan placed his paw in it, gentle, intentional. A soft warmth flowed through her chest. "You're not asking me to replace anything," she whispered. "You're asking me to understand." Rowan's ears lowered in that quiet, emotional way he had, not sad, just sincere. Mara sat deeper into the room, her fingers brushing the old blanket. It carried memories she never lived, but Rowan did. She turned to him. "You kept this door closed until you were ready. And now you're telling me, it's okay to open it." Rowan rested his chin on the threshold, eyes drifting toward the toy he placed there. It felt like an offering. A bridge. A gentle reveal from his heart to hers. Mara felt tears gather, soft, warm, peaceful. she whispered. "Thank you for trusting me with this." Rowan blinked slowly, then nudged the toy forward with his nose, pushing it gently into the room for the very first time. The gesture was small, but powerful. It was the beginning. The first step into a shared memory. A gentle reveal of what Rowan carried: love, loyalty, and a connection that still lived warmly inside him. And Mara knew. This was only the start of what he wanted her to understand. The sixth morning arrived not with anticipation, but with softness, a sense that something inside Rowan had settled overnight. When Mara stepped into the hallway, she didn't find him at the basket. She found him already sitting by the open door, waiting. The worn toy rested between his paws. Mara froze, surprised. "You brought it here before I woke up," she whispered. Rowan didn't move. He didn't need to. Everything he wanted to say lived in the calm steadiness of his gaze. Sunlight slid across the floor, warming the threshold of the memory room, that quiet space where past and present gently touched. Dust drifted like soft golden snow. A peaceful hush settled over everything. Mara approached slowly. Rowan lifted the toy and carried it with a tenderness that made her breath catch. His steps were small, deliberate, almost ceremonial. He walked inside the room, fully, for the first time. Mara's heart swelled at the sight. She followed him, careful not to disturb the moment. Rowan placed the toy beside the framed photograph. Not randomly. Not loosely. He nudged it into position with painstaking care, aligning it exactly with the corner of the frame. Then, he stepped back and sat. Straight. Still. Focused. Mara knelt beside him, her throat tightening with quiet emotion. "Oh, Rowan," her voice trembled. "You've been waiting for this moment, haven't you?" Rowan lowered his head, resting it lightly against her arm, a gesture so full of meaning she had to close her eyes to steady herself. The air in the room felt sacred now. Not heavy, just full of old love, respected and honored. Mara picked up the photograph, holding it gently in her hands. Her voice softened. "He was your handler, your partner. You trusted him with everything." Rowan's ears lifted slightly, listening, remembering. Mara traced the edges of the frame. "And now you're showing me that the love you had for him didn't disappear when he was gone." Rowan shifted closer until his shoulder pressed firmly against her leg. An anchor. A connection. Mara swallowed, her words quiet and slow. "You're letting me into your heart, into the part you never shared." Rowan breathed out a soft, steady exhale that brushed against her knee. Not sad, not longing, just peaceful. As if releasing something he'd been holding carefully for years. Mara set the photograph down and placed her hand over the toy. "You brought this here for him, didn't you?" Rowan nudged the toy once, gently, confirming what she already knew. A warm ache spread through Mara's chest. Not sorrow, connection. A deeper understanding. She whispered, "You're honoring him, and trusting me to honor him too." Rowan lifted his paw and placed it softly on her wrist, a quiet, emotional answer. Mara felt tears gather behind her eyes. She blinked slowly, letting one slip down her cheek. Rowan leaned in and touched his nose to her hand, the same way he'd done in his service days when offering comfort. Mara let out a shaky breath. "You still remember all the things he taught you, don't you?" Rowan's tail moved once, slow, steady, full of meaning. The room felt warmer now, like Rowan's memories had softened the air. Mara spoke in a quiet rhythm. "He taught you how to be brave. He taught you how to watch over someone. How to sense when they needed you. How to love with patience." Rowan's gaze drifted to the photograph again, then back to her. And then he did something unexpected. He stepped closer, circled once, slow, and lay down on the edge of the old blanket. The blanket from his service days. The blanket that still carried faint traces of him. It was the first time Rowan had touched it since coming to Mara's home. And Mara understood. This was his turning point. His moment of acceptance. His way of saying, "I remember him. I honor him. But I am safe now." I have room to love again. Mara sat beside him, resting her hand on his side. His breathing slowed under her palm, deep, calm, trusting. A soft glow filled the room, the warm sunlight touching Rowan's fur like a quiet blessing. Mara whispered, "I'm here, Rowan. I'm listening. I'm not going anywhere." Rowan's eyes softened, half closed, as if her presence eased something he had carried alone for too long. He nudged the toy toward her again, but not to guide her. Not to ask. To share. The moment wrapped around them like a warm embrace. Two hearts. Two stories. Past and present. Finally aligned. And in that gentle stillness, Mara knew. Rowan wasn't just remembering. He was healing. And he was inviting her, carefully, lovingly, into the most tender part of his soul. The next morning carried a different kind of quiet. Not the peaceful quiet of routine. Not the stillness of waiting. But the kind that comes when a truth is finally ready to rise. Mara found Rowan already awake, lying inside the memory room. His body rested on the old blanket. His head near the photograph. The worn toy placed gently between his paws like a bridge between past and present. He looked peaceful. Not grieving. Not longing. Just open, ready. Mara stepped into the doorway, her heart warming at the sight. "Good morning, sweetheart," she whispered. Rowan lifted his head, blinking in that soft, slow way that always felt like a greeting packed with emotion. Sunlight filtered through the small window, casting warm streaks across the floor. The room glowed like a quiet sanctuary, the kind meant for gentle truths. Mara knelt beside him. "You've brought me so far," she said softly. "And I finally understand." Rowan tilted his head, listening. Mara picked up the photograph, the one of Rowan sitting tall beside his former handler. Her fingers brushed over the frame, tracing the smile on the man's face. "He loved you deeply," she whispered. "And you loved him." Rowan leaned forward and touched his nose to the photograph, slow, delicate, reverent. Mara's breath caught. The small gesture held more emotion than words ever could. She continued, "When he passed, you didn't lose your purpose. You didn't forget your training. You didn't forget your heart." Rowan blinked, lowering his gaze gently. "You carried it with you," Mara said, her voice trembling with warmth. "All of it. His lessons. His love. His trust." Rowan shifted closer, resting his chin on her knee. Mara stroked behind his ear, feeling the familiar softness of his fur. "But coming here, living with me, that didn't erase him." She exhaled slowly. "You were waiting for the right moment to share him with me." Rowan breathed out a deep, relaxed exhale as if releasing something held quietly for years. Mara looked around the small room, noticing new details she hadn't seen before. The blanket, worn at the corners from years of travel. A few faded tags on the boxes that read Canine Gear. A small badge tucked beside the photo, Rowan's service tag. She picked it up carefully. The metal was cool, but the engraving still clear. "Service partner, Rowan." Mara's eyes softened. "You were more than a helper," she whispered. "You were family to him." Rowan nudged her elbow, a quiet encouragement. Mara continued gently. "And now you're showing me something important. Something beautiful." She placed her hand on Rowan's chest, feeling the slow, steady beat beneath her palm. "You're telling me that love doesn't disappear when someone is gone. It finds another place to live. Another heart to rest in. Another person to protect." Rowan closed his eyes halfway, leaning into her touch. Mara's voice grew soft, full of warmth. "You're saying I never stopped loving him. And also, I have room to love you too." Rowan lifted his head then, not abruptly, just intentionally. He nudged the toy toward her, pushing it against her hand. But this time, it wasn't a message. It wasn't a guide. It wasn't a memory cue. It was a gift. A shared moment. A symbol of trust. Mara's breath trembled with emotion. Oh, Rowan, she pressed her forehead lightly against his. Thank you, for letting me be part of your heart. Rowan's tail brushed the blanket once, slow, meaningful. Mara lifted the toy and held it close to her chest. You carried this through your grief, she whispered. And you kept it safe until you weren't carrying it alone anymore. Rowan rested his paw on her leg, steady and warm. Mara continued, her voice gentle. You weren't asking me to relive your pain. You were asking me to understand your love. The room felt alive with warmth, sunlight glowing on the old blanket, soft shadows swaying in the quiet air. It didn't feel like a room of memories anymore. It felt like a room of healing. Mara reached toward a folded piece of paper beneath the photograph. Carefully, she unfolded it. Handwriting covered the page, a note from Rowan's former handler. Simple. Tender. A line stood out. If Rowan ever guides you to this room, it means he's ready to share the rest of his heart. Mara covered her mouth, emotion swelling. Rowan pressed his head against her shoulder. She whispered through a soft breath. You knew. You always knew I would find this when I needed to. Rowan listened quietly, his body warm against hers. Mara wrapped her arms around him gently, not tight, not urgent, just lovingly. You're not letting go, she murmured. You're letting me in. Rowan breathed in, breathed out. Peaceful. Steady. Whole. And in that warm, glowing room, Mara finally understood the heart-touching truth. Rowan wasn't guiding her into his past. He was inviting her into the part of his soul that still remembered love, and still believed in it. The final morning in their quiet week of discovery rose with a softness that felt almost sacred. Sunlight moved gently through the house, slow, warm, like it knew the journey between Mara and Rowan had reached its tender peak. Mara stood in the hallway, coffee untouched, simply watching Rowan. He rested peacefully on the old blanket inside the memory room, not guarding it, not waiting, not grieving. Just being. Calm. Whole. At ease in a place that once held so much unspoken weight. When she stepped closer, Rowan lifted his head, eyes warm with recognition. Not the deep, searching look from earlier days. This one was different. Softer. Brighter. At peace. Hey, sweetheart, Mara murmured. Rowan stretched his paws forward, easing himself upright. The worn toy lay beside him, no longer clutched with purpose, just resting, part of the space, part of his story. Mara knelt on the edge of the blanket, brushing the fabric gently with her fingertips. It feels lighter in here, she whispered. Rowan pressed his shoulder into her side, a gentle, grounding weight. Mara smiled. It's because you finally let me carry some of it with you, isn't it? Rowan's tail brushed the blanket once, slow and meaningful. The memory room didn't feel like a shrine anymore. It felt like a bridge, a place where Rowan's past and present coexisted warmly, without conflict. Mara picked up the photograph again. But this time, instead of feeling like she was holding a piece of Rowan's heart she didn't belong to, she felt included in it. He would be proud of you, she said softly. Of how deeply you love, of how you kept going, of how you opened your heart again. Rowan leaned his head against her chest, the weight of his trust settling there like a blessing. And I think, Mara continued, her voice trembling with warmth, he'd be grateful that you let someone be there for you the way you were always there for him. Rowan breathed out, slow, steady, at peace. Mara set the photo gently back in place, then turned to Rowan fully. You're not torn between two lives, she whispered. You're connected to both. Rowan gazed at her with that soulful understanding unique to dogs who have lived through deep bonds. His eyes carried memory, but also hope. Mara lifted the worn toy and held it between them. You kept this safe for him, she said. And now, you're sharing it with me. Rowan nudged the toy toward her hand, not guiding, not prompting, simply giving. Mara felt her heart swell, a warm ache pushing behind her eyes. She breathed out shakily. Thank you, she whispered. For trusting me with your story. For trusting me with your heart. Rowan rested his paw gently on her wrist, the same gesture he used to comfort his handler. A gesture now shared with her. She leaned forward, resting her forehead softly against his. "You're home, Rowan. Truly home. And I'm here. Always." The moment held, warm and still, wrapped in golden light. Then Rowan did something she didn't expect. Something small, but full of healing. He stood, walked past the photograph, past the blanket, and out into the hallway. He paused, looked back at her, and wagged his tail, slow, steady, inviting. Mara felt the message instantly. "You're ready to leave the room," she whispered, rising gently. Rowan waited, patient and calm. She stepped out of the memory room with him, pulling the door softly but not completely shut, leaving it slightly open. A symbol. A promise. A place neither forgotten nor heavy. Rowan walked toward the living room, settling beside the large window where sunlight pooled like warm honey across the floor. Mara sat beside him. He rested his head on her lap, relaxed, peaceful, a dog whose story had made a full, gentle circle. She stroked his fur slowly. "You're not alone in your memories anymore," she whispered. "And you're not carrying them by yourself." Rowan's breathing deepened, steady as waves on a quiet shore. Mara smiled softly. "You shared him with me. Now let me share the rest of your life with you." Rowan's tail moved once, then twice, a slow, grateful rhythm. Together they sat in the warm morning light. Two souls connected through love that had crossed years, losses, and healing. A past honored. A present embraced. A future opening gently before them. Nothing dramatic. Nothing heavy. Just a beautiful, tender truth. Rowan had not lost anything. He had simply found enough peace, enough love, to let someone new into the place where his heart still remembered. And Mara, smiling through soft tears, whispered the final words the room and Rowan had taught her. "Love doesn't end. It just finds another home."